What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Today we're here to discuss Packers versus Vikings. We're going to focus on the offensive side of the ball for the Green Bay Packers, specifically how well equipped are they to handle this pressure-packed, blitz-heavy Minnesota Vikings defense. But first, before we dive in, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work, including the article version of what we're discussing today over at ESPNlacrosse.com, and my Wisconsin sports radio fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, whatever you need, any day of the week, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. You can find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday, 3 to 6. Like I said, a big element, component of this game, and not just this game, but anytime you're going to face the Minnesota Vikings with Brian Flores as the defensive coordinator, you have to be ready for the blitz. And not just the blitz, but how the Vikings blitz, right? There's a couple elements, a lot of teams blitz, right? But there's a couple elements that make this Vikings defense and how they do it unique. One, how often they're blitzing. They blitz at the highest rate in football coming into week 17, according to Pro Football Reference. They blitz more by nearly 5% compared to the second highest blitzing team in football. So like I said, you have to be mindful of it really on every play. And Josh Myers talked about this. He goes, usually when you're talking about a blitz-heavy defense, it means they blitz a lot on third downs. That's not the case with the Vikings. They will blitz you on first down. They will blitz you on second, third, and fourth down as well. They blitz a lot. So that's one element to it. But adding to the chaos, to the confusion that Minnesota generates from those blitzes is, one, the number of rushers that they'll send. This isn't just, sending the linebacker through the A-gap. They will send multiple blitzers, and they will do so from really any part of the field. They'll disguise where it's coming from. There's the willingness of them to send multiple blitzers, to rely on just their cornerbacks in coverage, knowing that or believing that they're going to be able to get home and cause some disruption. So again, it's the amount of blitzing that the Vikings do. It's the disguising of where these blitzes are coming from. It's the amount of defenders that they will throw at the opposing offensive lines that makes going up against this defense so challenging, right? There's so much that the offense has to account for, so many different looks that they're going to see, so many different types of pressures that they're going to get in this game, that it causes a lot of chaos, confusion for the opposing offense. And as a result of, again, all those pressures and how Brian Flores sends them, the disguising, the willingness, the number of defenders, Minnesota's entering this game fifth in pressure rate on the opposing quarterback and fifth in sacks as well. And it's not, again, we're focused on the blitz here, but they have a very good defensive front too. Jonathan Greenard at the defensive end position, Andrew Van Ginkel. They have a very good defensive front that on its own already has the ability to get after the quarterback. So this is a very, very good Vikings defense in terms of generating pressure, and we all know how disruptive that can be, right? Throws off the timing, the rhythm of the play, forces the quarterback to speed up, maybe get rid of the ball before he wants to. Passing lanes, receivers might not have the time that they need within their routes to get open when the pressure's coming that quickly. So just a huge amount of chaos that can be generated from this. And Jordan Love said it best. It's going to be a big challenge this week, as we saw in week 4 when Green Bay went up against this defense. Now, handling that pressure starts pre-snap, right? Starts before the ball's even snapped with the offensive line, Josh Myers at center, and his communication. Identifying who the Mike linebacker is, identifying where potential blitzers might be coming from, communicating those blocking responsibilities to the rest of the offensive line, to the running backs, to the tight ends, anyone who might be responsible for blocking on that play, so everyone is assignment sound and knows what their specific role and responsibility is from a blocking perspective on that play. Then, when Love's under center, it's at the line of scrimmage, he has the ability to make any protection adjustments that Josh Myers has set based on what he sees. Is there any late movement from the Minnesota defense? If the Packers send someone in motion, how does Minnesota adjust that maybe tips their hat a little bit to what they might be doing? I think the hard count in this game, although it could be challenging in a loud road environment, could be important as well, right? You get the hard count, you get the linebackers, safeties, cornerback, whoever, again, maybe tipping their hand a little bit on whether they're blitzing or not, giving the Packers a little bit of insight to what might be coming their way. Then at the snap, It's about, and I know this sounds very oversimplified, I'll just say this, but for the offensive line, doing your job and executing your responsibility within the scope of the play call, your blocking assignment, all of those different aspects. Because I imagine it could be quite easy to overextend yourself, right? With all these different looks that they'll throw at you, with all these different defenders coming your way, it could be easy to try to do a little too much. But that's where offensive lines get hurt, overextending themselves, trying to do that little extra. The intention is great, the results oftentimes are not going to be. So within the play call, within the scope of what you're being asked to do as a blocker, you need to execute that specific responsibility, protect your zone to the best of your ability as possible. And when those additional rushers are coming, or if Minnesota runs stunts where they're moving the defensive linemen around through different rush lanes, the offensive line has to, again, stick to the responsibility within your zone and trust that the offensive linemen to your left and right are going to do the same. So if you have to slide your protection, you know that the person next to you is going to be doing the same thing. If you need to pass off a blocker because there's a blitzer coming, you need to know that the offensive lineman to your right or left is going to be there and able to handle that responsibility. It's about sticking to your rules. Every play call, every blocking assignment, there are specific rules that these offensive linemen have to stick to. And in a game against an opponent that does, again, such an excellent job. I keep going back to the word chaos. I think that's a great way to describe what Minnesota does defensively. When you're facing a defense that causes that chaos, sticking to your rules is so important, and trusting that the guy next to you is going to be doing the same. So then as a collective, cohesive unit, the offensive line is operating as one. And that's ultimately what you're striving for, not just against the Vikings, but every single play, every single week. That's what you're striving for. So when you overextend yourself and perhaps you try to handle two rushers, or maybe get in front of a blocking lane that is outside of your zone, that disrupts the chain of the offensive line, right? Now there's a weakness that's been exposed because you're trying to do too much. So operating within the scope of what your specific responsibility is, obviously doing it at a high level, trusting, knowing that the offensive linemen next to you are going to be doing the same. So again, the ultimate goal is to be operating as a cohesive 5-man offensive line unit, because again, the offensive line play is very much the sum of the parts are better than any one individual. You can have a great right tackle, but if the left side of your offensive line is struggling, your overall offensive line unit is going to be so-so. So that's going to be really important for this Packers offensive line unit, how they handle these Minnesota pressures. And adding to the complexity of it all, again, they're going to be playing in a loud stadium. So pre-snap, that communication we talked about earlier, Josh Myers being very deliberate. I think just being loud, I don't think there's any way other to overcome it. You're not going to see hand signals along the offensive line. So just being loud, being very deliberate in the communication, everyone being, added tension, making sure they're catching all of the communication signals from Myers. And then before the snap, catching some portion of Jordan Love's cadence. So the offensive line knows when the ball is going to be snapped, because again, that split second can be very advantageous, obviously, versus having to, if you don't catch the cadence, and now you have to, if you're the offensive lineman, you have to watch the ball. Just like the defenders, you're going to be more reactionary to it. It's going to slow you down a little bit versus getting that split second. All right, here it comes, get off the ball, go, getting into position. So big challenge for the Packers offensive line. Now, as discussed, the Vikings, they blitz obviously a lot more. They blitz a lot differently than other teams, but it's not as if the Packers haven't seen pressures this season from opposing defenses. They've been blitzed a lot. Jordan Love has been blitzed at the 5th highest rate this season, and for the most part, the Packers offensive line has handled it well. Overall, Love has been pressured at the 12th lowest rate in football this season. So being blitzed is, again, not new for this Packers offense line, but the added wrinkle, as we talked about, is how often the Vikings blitz, the disguises, how many defenders they send, where those pressures are coming from. That's the added wrinkle. But blitzing in general, Packers have seen a lot of it this season, and they've handled it well. And again, going back to the importance of the cohesiveness when you're dealing with blitzes, I think the continuity that the Packers have had on the offensive line has been a big part of the overall success, not just against the blitz, but in general that they've had this season with operating with pretty much the same starting five for much of the year. Because like I said, it's that group has to be in unison. It's so crucial that they all do, because if there's one weak link in that chain, the whole offensive line unit can be exposed on a play. So again, it goes back to that continuity, that cohesiveness, and how that group operates as a whole. And overall, when Matt LaFleur was asked about how he thinks, again, we went through the numbers, but how does he think the offensive line has done in protection against the blitz this season? He said there's been a lot of good from that unit. Obviously, like anything, there's always opportunities, areas of improvement, things to clean up. But again, sounds like Matt LaFleur is in line with what the numbers say, which is that this offensive line has done well against the pressure this season. Now, if everything just described is before the snap or right at the snap in terms of what the Packers have to do from an execution standpoint to best handle these Minnesota pressures, there's a big difference between this game, where we are now in week 17, and week 4, when the Packers last played the Minnesota Vikings, that I think is going to be a pivotal part of Sunday's game and how the Packers handle the pressure. And that's Jordan Love's mobility. That week 4 game against Minnesota, that was Jordan Love's first game back from knee injury. And then we all know a few weeks later against Jacksonville, he suffered the groin injury. Through really that first half of the year, Jordan Love was working through those lower body injuries, and it hampered his mobility. We saw it in the Packers running less under center snaps. We saw less play action from this Packers offense, and just Love's general mobility as a whole, you could tell, wasn't where it is now, right? Since the bye week, you can tell that he is much healthier. And when it comes to that mobility component, yes, it's great to be able to get out of the pocket and run for 15 yards, but really the where you've seen that ability take hold is how he navigates, how he moves around the pocket. Look at that play against the Detroit Lions where the blitzer came through free. Love was able to avoid him, stepped up, and then found Christian Watson. I don't know that that's a play that Love is making in week 6 earlier this season when he's dealing, again, with the knee, with the groin injuries, because I don't know if he had the ability at that time to move as quickly as he did, to get out of the way, to avoid the pressure. And so the mobility component of it, again, it's not taking off for the 20-yard runs. It's how he moves around the pocket. It's how he manipulates the pocket to, again, avoid pressures, to buy that extra half second of time, to open up passing lanes from, again, just how he navigates and how he moves around the pocket. That's the element that through the first half of the season, I think was missing from Love's game and was missing from just this Packers offense as a whole, because LaFleur, the last few weeks, has heaped heavy praise on Jordan Love and just his ability to avoid negative plays, right? To not take sacks. And again, another part of that equation is then the decision making, right? There's pressure, knowing where your checkdowns are, knowing where your outlet options are, just to get the ball out of your hands, just to turn a potential negative play into, even if it's just a 3 or 4 yard gain, that's a heck of a lot better than a 6-7 yard loss. So Love has really improved in that area. I think we can see that with our eyes, but the numbers show it as well. From weeks 1 through 9 against the blitz, these numbers are from Pro Football Focus, Love was completing just 59% of his throws at 6.4 yards per attempt with 4 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Since the bye week, weeks 11 through 16, that's 6 games, he's completing 72% of his passes, 9.9 yards per pass attempt. He's generating big plays against these blitzes, and he's thrown 5 touchdowns to no interceptions. Again, I think a lot of that success is, one, practice, right? As he's navigating through those injuries, he's either not participating in practice, he's limited participant in practice. We've talked about before, Tom Clements, Packers quarterbacks coach, I think it was more so last season, but referenced that the quarterback's accuracy, not just Love, any quarterback, starts in their base. It starts at their feet. It starts with their legs. So now that you have a healthy Jordan Love, we're seeing improved accuracy as well, especially as he was working through those lower body injuries. But I think the other part of that equation is his ability to avoid pressure, to navigate the pocket, to step up, to buy that extra half second of time, which in the NFL is a lifetime. especially when you're talking about the passing game. And I think that component of it has really been a catalyst to the improved numbers that we just went through when he's going up against the blitz. And obviously, we just talked about this Vikings team, how often they blitz, everything that goes into that. Jordan Love's ability to avoid those negative plays, to not take sacks, to know where his outlet options are, to get the ball out of his hands, to avoid the pressure, to buy extra time, going to be a really, really critical element to Sunday's game. And again, that was one part, one facet, one element that I don't think was operating at full capacity the last time these teams got together. Again, week 4 was Love's first game back from that knee injury that he sustained against the Eagles in week 1. So there's no excuse. When you're injured and you're on the football field, you're expected to perform at your operating level, right? But to say that the injuries that he was working through weren't a factor to some degree, right? Doesn't mean the Packers win that game if he's completely healthy. We don't know that. But against a team that blitzes as often as the Vikings do, you have to think that's a part of the equation. And the fact that he is now healthy, the fact that he's moving around the pocket, operating at such a high level against the blitz, you have to think that that's going to be a crucial element in determining the outcome of Sunday's game. Now, another element of this Packers offense that can help them out against the blitz is the run game, right? A good run game can help take away some of that bite, right? That a defense has from as a blitz. Because if you're struggling in the run game, you're getting behind the sticks, you're in these second, third and long situations, that's just going to play right into the Vikings' hands. They know you're passing the ball in those situations. They're going to ramp up the pressures in those situations. But if you can stay ahead of the sticks, find some success on the ground game, opens up the playbook for the offense, takes away a little bit of that bite from the pass rush, from the ability to blitz. So that element for Green Bay is going to be important in this game, but it's not going to come easy. Vikings run defense been one of the best in football this season, giving up just 3.9 yards per rush. So Packers are going to have to find a way to find success in that regard, because again, it can lessen the hit that comes with going up against a blitz heavy opponent. So again, beautiful thing about football, whether it's a single play, whether it's the outcome of a game, so much that goes into determining those outcomes. But I think how the offensive line, how Jordan Love handles the Vikings' pressures, their blitzes on Sunday is going to be one of the bigger determining factors in how this game unfolds and ultimately who might end up winning the game. All right, before we wrap up, one more quick topic. I didn't know if I should devote a whole video to this, since 2 videos ago talked about this quite a bit, but the Packers' versatility in the run game. We just talked about how difficult this Vikings run defense has been to go up against this season. The Packers' versatility in the run game is going to be important in finding some sort of success on the ground in Sunday's game. Like I said, 2 videos ago following the Saints game, we talked about how the Packers really showcase that versatility, and I think that's going to be important in Sunday's game. In short, previous games leading up to the Saints game, we saw a lot of gap-heavy scheme blocking from the Packers, running between the tackles north and south. Found a lot of success doing it, but particularly against Detroit, against Seattle, those defenses adjusted a lot quicker. And in the second halves of those games, we saw it be tough sledding for Green Bay. They're having a tough time picking up yards. So what do they do against the Saints? They pivot to more outside zone runs, right? Getting outside the tackles. That included getting the receivers involved. The running backs were being asked to go run towards the boundary as well, getting the offensive linemen in space. So what that does is now on tape, if you're the Vikings and you're preparing for Green Bay, who wants to run the ball, right? That's been the catalyst for success for that offense really since the bye week. But just, they want to run the ball, but how do they want to run the ball, right? Are they going to run between the tackles? Are they going to try to get you out in space? You can't necessarily pick one or the other because they have the ability to do both. So from an offensive perspective, that can spread a defense out, right? It can't just all focus in on stopping you between the tackles. They have to be prepared on the boundary. The defensive ends can't come crashing in because they think you're going to run between the tackles. They have to set those edges. So again, that can create more spacing. It just takes that split second of hesitation as they're trying to read where the ball is going for a running lane to be opened up. So I think the Packers putting that on tape, pivoting from that gap scheme to that more outside zone style against the Saints, I think was really, really important again, in terms of putting that on tape and what they're going to want to do in this week's game. I think it's going to have to be a mixture because, again, it's a very good Vikings defense, and keeping them off balanced as best you can, I think, is going to have to be a crucial element for the Packers' run game. So keep your eyes on that component of it as the game unfolds. And like I said, I think it was 2 videos ago after the Saints game went into greater detail about what the Packers had done previously, what they did against the Saints, and then what that could mean for them going forward. But if you made it this far, hit like, hit subscribe. I appreciate you tuning in. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. Download the 1055 ESPN Lacrosse app. And until next time, friends, take care.